Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. We're holding by the 40th installment of the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Balak, which is a packed parsha. It speaks about Balak, speaks about Balaam, the non-Jewish prophet. Here the Torah says, beginning chapter 22, it says, Balak, son of Zippor, so all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Moab became very frightened of the people because it was numerous. Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, now the congregation will lick up our entire surroundings as an ox licks up greenery of the field. Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab at the time. And now it gets to what we really want to get to. He sent messengers to Balaam, son of Beor, to Petor, which is by the river of the land of the members of his people, to summon him, saying, Behold, the people has come out of Egypt. Behold, it has covered the surface of the earth, and sits opposite me. So please come and curse the people for me. It is too powerful for me. Perhaps I will be able to strike it, drive it away from the land. Or another, whoever you bless is blessed, whoever you curse is cursed. So, here that's the beginning of chapter 22, verses 2 to verse 6. So here, Balak is, we get introduced to him, and he's the king of Moab, and Moab is frightened of the Jewish people, which they should be at this time, because Jewish people had all these miracles done for them, and they're very strong, very powerful, as long as they go in God's ways. So what does he do? He summons Balaam, or Balaam, in order that Balaam should curse the Jewish people. So, Balaam is a non-Jewish prophet. He's a seemingly an unbelievable non-Jewish prophet. The Torah says later in the book of Deuteronomy that there's not going to be any other prophet as great as Moshe. That means by the Jewish people, right? But the non-Jews had this great prophet, right? They had this great prophet Balaam. So Rashi says, there's a major question over here. And the question is that why did God rest his countenance, whatever you want to call it, his being, so to speak, or partially his being, on a non-Jewish evil person who he had a connection, so to speak. We'll see. Even though Balaam was evil, we'll see that, he was certainly great in his own right. But what Rashi here continues and says that why did God put his spirit, so to speak, on Balaam, so the non-Jewish nations wouldn't be able to say, hey, had we had a prophet that, if you would have given us prophets, we would have done shuvah. We possibly could have done shuvah. We would have returned. We would have repented. So they should have given us a non-Jewish prophet. So that was their claim. The Jews have Moshe, and we'll see there are prophets later. But at this point, why not give us a prophet? So the commentaries have a major question over here. God says, I gave you a prophet. I gave you Balaam. Right? Balaam is, pretty impressive in his own right. So what's the problem? You have Balaam. So the commentaries say, but how does that help? Yeah, Balaam may have been a prophet, so to speak, but he had bad character traits. Right? He was disgusting, pretty much. In God's eyes, he was a disgusting person. So, if he's a disgusting person, and God says, listen, you want a prophet? So fine, I'll give you a prophet. Here, take Balaam. They say, well, if you would have given us a real prophet, we might have done shuvah. But what do you want from us? You gave us Balaam. Right? Balaam was, inherently evil, and he didn't change anybody. So the question on the nations, or for the nations, does not get answered. Because they say we want a prophet, but you gave us the worst possible one. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, Balaam's like a -5. So you gave us a -5 prophet? Mr. Bottom of the barrel prophet? How does that answer? That's a major question. So in order to understand this, a few things we have to unravel. First of all, how is it that even though Balaam had tremendously bad character traits, how could it be that it's that of a prophet? Right? The question isn't why did God rest his spirit on him. Yeah, he was a terrible person, and he was tremendously evil. Right? I mean, that is part of the question. But the Ramban, others bring down that Balaam was not a fool. Balak, now you have to understand, Balak, who's the king of Moab, is no friend of Midian. Right? They've been fighting for years, centuries, generations, whatever you want to call it, and they are absolutely at war, against each other. They are not on friendly terms. So if they're not on friendly terms, very interesting that that Balak sends messengers to Balaam in order that whoever Balaam curses will be cursed, and whoever he blesses will be blessed. So Balak puts away the badness, the bad feelings that they feel, that Moab feels for Midian. And what do? They want to join together with their enemy, because look what he claimed. He claimed, you have this nation, came out of Egypt, very powerful, I'm afraid. Let's join together, help us deal with them. Otherwise, we're going to get destroyed. So, it's very interesting that they put aside their differences in order to want to destroy the Jewish people. Now, this is very early in Jewish history, that you'll have nations that will join together, even though they're really bitter enemies, but they'll join together in a common goal to try and destroy Jewish people, or try and knock them off their pedestal, whatever their case is. It is interesting. We'll jump through history, a drop before we get to Mr. Balaam over here and what's going on. If you look at the Malbim, one of the great biblical commentators of the last century, and he describes the end of days by the prophecy in Zechariah, the war of Gog and Magog. Right, just cut to the chase. The war of Gog and Magog. If there is going to be a war, many say there will be a war. A final war before the Messiah comes. So the war of Gog and Magog. Who's Gog? Who's Magog? Says the Malbim. You have Edom against Yishmael. Edom represents the Western world. Yishmael represents the Muslims. So what happens? The Malbim says they have a disagreement. There's a disagreement between Edom and the Muslims, between the Western world and Islam. Right? See what's going on today. There's a disagreement. And why do they disagree? They disagree in religion. Right? Pretty simple to understand. They disagree in world outlook, spiritual outlook, whatever the case is. So they have this bloodbath. Thousands seemingly die in this bloodbath. And then they realize that the real reason that they're fighting is really because of the Jews. Now, imagine thousands of people, being slaughtered on both sides. They have a disagreement in their outlook in the world. But when they realize, or they think they realize, that the real reason that they're fighting, or even if it's not, but they come to the conclusion that the reason they're fighting is really because of the Jewish people. Go figure. Right? Just like, in when America attacked Iraq and tried to get Saddam Hussein out of power since they were afraid he had weapons of mass destruction. Nonetheless, what did Saddam Hussein do? You attack us, they're going to send Scud missiles to Israel. Markesha, what's the connection? Right? Because America attacks them, they're going to attack Israel, which they did. Doesn't make any sense. So, same thing over here. They're arguing, they're fighting, it's a bloodbath. They say, oh, wait a minute, we're doing it because of the Jewish people. So then they decide to join together in order to go against the Jewish people, and that's really the beginning of the end, and Messiah comes and wipes them out, at least according to the Malbim. Now, so why I mention that? Because here, Balaam and Balak join forces in order to go against a bigger threat. What's that bigger threat? Now that bigger threat is the Jewish people, which Balak is terrified they're going to take over and wipe them out. Now, one thing to understand about Balaam, now Balaam wasn't a dummy. Balaam certainly had power. He had a tremendous amount of power in sorcery. Tremendous amount of power. That's why Balak's willing to pay him so much, because he knows he's so successful. Now, at the same time, the Ramban and others bring out that, Balaam really had power. And seemingly, if you go through the Ramban, it seems that, he had a tremendous amount of power even compared to Moshe. Now we say, there's no greater prophet than Moshe. That's true. One of the 13 principles of faith is that Moshe is the father of all prophets. That is true. Right? So, when the Torah says there'll be no Navi, there'll be no prophet like Moshe, yeah, there won't be a Jewish prophet like Moshe. But there'll be a non-Jewish prophet like Moshe, and that's Balaam. Right? You have a non-Jewish prophet who has a tremendous amount of power. Talmud says that he was able to grasp, however he figured it out, like the split second when God got angry. And at that split second, that's when he tried to nail the Jewish people. I mean, who can figure that out? That's pretty much an impossibility to try and figure out. Be that as it may, Balaam had real power. Might have been negative power. He certainly, as we mentioned, he's certainly, disgusting in a lot of things that he did, and extremely evil. That there's no question. But he did have power. He did have a tremendous amount of power to the extent that his prophecy, or his ability as a prophet, so to speak, is even compared to Moshe. Like, why would we even say that? Like, why would we even consider that? Moses is like way up here, he should be like way down here. So, if I went through that Ramban, we'd be here till tomorrow. So, we're not going to discuss the Ramban in depth. Just going to bring out the idea that he wasn't a slouch. Right? The difference is, though, and this is a major, major issue, and the issue is that his character traits were disgusting. So, being a prophet, obviously, the Jewish prophets had to work on themselves tremendously to receive prophecy. They had to work on their closeness to God, and they had to work on character development. You want to be a prophet, you can't be disgusting in God's eyes. So, says Mori Rebbe, Rav Agon Moshe Sternbuch Shlita, should be well. He says, the prophecy over here, or when we look at prophecy in general, prophecy doesn't have the power to change the nature of a person. In other words, a person, as the Torah says, right at the end of Parshas Balak, that when God's going to destroy the world, when He's going to bring a flood, He says, I understand, Yetzer Lev Adam Ramin Urav. The nature of man or the heart of man, is evil from his youth. In other words, he's got a bad influence inside of himself. It's called evil inclination. You can kill him. So his inclination is bad from when he's young. So God says, I'm going to wipe out, I'm going to wipe out all man except for Noah and his family. I'm going to wipe out everyone else, start from scratch. And even though I do understand that man is, man's pretty bad because of what their nature is, nonetheless, I won't destroy the world again. Now, that doesn't mean man is inherently evil, right? Let's not make the mistake. Man has flaws. They're created from the physical world. The soul, the spiritual soul that has the ability to destroy the body, when it goes in, is trapped. So you have a fight between the physical and the spiritual, right? And it's constant, 24/7. Doesn't stop till a person dies. So, some say even when a person dies, the evil inclination is still working. Nonetheless, in this case, even though the soul doesn't have the ability to shine, as the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, the Ramchal says that the only time the soul is ever going to shine the way it needs to shine is by resurrection. In other words, if it gets its portion of the world to come, it'll be in a way station until resurrection, whenever that's going to be. However that fits in, however that's going to fit in, it's after the Messiah. The question is it before Olam Haba, before the next world or not? The whole question exactly, which again we're not going to get into. But the soul doesn't have the ability to shine in this world. It's trapped. It's trapped in a physical body. So being trapped in a physical body, as the Ramchal says, the only way it can shine is if it does mitzvahs. Even as a non-Jew, if he keeps what he's supposed to keep and does what he needs to do. So then that spiritual side can shine. It's not going to shine in the full, in the fullness that it should, but it will, you'll certainly look at a person and you'll see that they are different. They've worked on their spiritual side for a long time, so they show that they're different. But it's not the same as what it's going to be like when the soul goes in after resurrection. Right? That's going to be a whole different thing. So I just wanted to point out that, a person has an evil inclination. And now the evil inclination is inside of him. So now he has to fight constantly, day and night, the good inclination against the bad inclination. And if he does the right thing, then the good inclination will raise the level of the body and the soul. If he goes according to the bad inclination, right, it debases the body and the soul. So even if he's got a bad inclination, doesn't mean he's inherently evil. He can raise himself to a high spiritual level. He's got deterrence. That's for sure. He gets blocks in different places. He gets lost in this world. That's possible. But it doesn't mean he's inherently evil and he can never change. So here my Rebbe says, if a person really works on himself and goes away from desire, right, the desire of his heart, and he subjugates, good language here, in Hebrew, he subjugates his evil inclination. Meaning he works on it to the extent that the evil inclination does not have as much power over him. Or if any, which, again, you have to work very hard. Because the evil inclination, even if you beat it once, he's going to keep coming back. You're not going to stop. He'll give you different trials and tribulations or whatever the case is. But, you beat him here, you beat him there, he's still going to keep coming. You can't rest on your laurels for 1 second. So, the goal is to go away from desire, because desire, drives the heart away. It steers the heart in a place where you don't want it to go. In other words, it's going to be overcome. It's going to be overcome with, with these ideas to do the wrong thing. And because of that, what does it do? It takes you away from doing what God wants you to do. So keep in mind, just in general terms, if a person does the right thing, and the whole goal in this world, as we'll refer to the Ramchal again, that the Ramchal says the whole goal in this world is a person draw close to God. So if you do, he's telling you that the way to do that is through the mitzvahs. God gave us a book, manufactured himself. So he says, you want to come close to me, this is what you have to do. And stay away from this. Do this, stay away from that. If you do that, you draw yourself close to me. If not, you go further away. So here my Rebbe says, you go according to desire. You get trapped by desire, whatever that desire is. Doesn't mean it's not fun. It can be tremendously fun, but it'll take you away. It'll take you away from what God wants you to do. And if you do the right thing, then you're going to raise yourself level after level. You raise yourself level after level in spiritual terms. You become a tremendously strong spiritual individual. So that's good. So now that we understand that, so here, Rabbi here says that the Jewish prophets, the holy prophets of the generations, that God rested his presence upon them was only because they were strong in overcoming their evil inclination. And that was, according to the Rambam, the ability to receive prophecy is on this condition, that you're able to overcome your evil inclination. So a person had to prepare themselves, they had to work very hard in order to do that, to get rid of all these terrible things that are in a person's heart. Now you might say they're normal, and they may be normal desires, that may be true, but even so, if it's something that God doesn't want you to do, even if we quote unquote call it normal, nonetheless, it's negative. So, if you have negative things in there, a person's not going to become a prophet. Now, it doesn't mean a prophet is perfect, right? There's nobody perfect. But God chose those people who worked on themselves the most and perfected themselves to the most that they could, and those people received prophecy. So this is the answer, my Rebbe here says, this is the answer that God gives to the nations. Why? Because the nature of a person is not necessarily to go after good. That's not what we normally do. A person as a child grows up, there's an obligation of the parent. Obviously, shouldn't say obviously, but it is obvious. A parent has an obligation to educate the child. So if the child does something wrong, the parent has to punish them. Now, the punishment obviously has to fit the crime, but a child needs to be punished. They need to be disciplined. Now, the verse in Mishlei and Proverbs, King Solomon tells us that someone who spares the rod is considered cruel. Now, sparing the rod doesn't mean you beat your kid to death or within an inch of his life. Corporal punishment today is not in vogue. A person hits their child. Every educator today will say that's not going to get them to do what you want them to do. You have to discipline. There's an obligation to discipline where it needs to be done. Right? Hitting is not discipline, just an easy way out, and they don't learn a lesson. They get smacked around. What does that teach them? So we have to teach them in words, not in action, not by smacking them around, in order that they do the right thing. So, there are a lot of things in the world that we want to keep our children away from. We want to keep them safe, etc. But we want to give them wholesome values, right? So we're going to give them values according to the Torah. So if they do something that contradicts it or goes against it, let's say they speak badly against others or whatever, you have to discipline them. I mean, you have to punish them every time they do something wrong. It depends what it is. But if they start speaking badly against someone else, you have to explain to them. You're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara. You're not allowed to speak badly against somebody. You're not allowed to take revenge against someone. Now, that's not an easy thing. You want to borrow someone's lawnmower, and he says, no, you can't borrow it. And let's say you eventually buy a lawnmower, and this guy's lawnmower broke, and he comes to you and says, can I borrow your lawnmower? And you say, I'm not going to let you borrow my lawnmower because you didn't let me borrow your lawnmower. So scram, bug off. Go take a long walk off a short pier, like goodbye. That's a Torah prohibition. That's taking revenge. So the other guy might have not done something nice. That's true. Right? He, for whatever reason, he didn't want to lend it to you. It was his choice. Could have had any number of reasons why he didn't want to do it. Doesn't matter. So you got offended, and now you say, oh, you didn't do this for me, so I'm not going to do this for you. No, that's taking revenge. You're not allowed to do it. You may feel you're justified, but the Torah says it's forbidden. So you say, but, it's a hard thing to overcome. He wouldn't, I needed his lawnmower. I had weeds up the gazoo. My lawn looked like a jungle. I had all these other animals that I'd never seen before. Mutual of Omaha's wild kingdom. So I wanted to trim the grass and kill some of these weeds. And all this other stuff, so at least it can be presentable. And I don't have, wild kingdom in my front yard or my backyard or whatever. And he said no. He said, I can't lend it to you. Again, you may be justified. You may really need it. He could have his own reasons, but for you, it doesn't matter. You really needed it. He didn't come through. So, if he would come to you, yeah, that's taking revenge. Not only that, you can't speak badly about him. If someone would come to you and you start mentions his name, you start bad-mouthing him, that's forbidden. So, the nature of people, the nature of people God tells the nations is bad. Right? People are corrupt in many ways. So again, doesn't mean they're inherently evil. It means their evil inclination can overcome them. They can do terrible things. Doesn't mean they can't overcome their evil inclination. That God says like this, even if I would put my presence, my holy presence, I would come down to this world, put my holy presence on Balaam itself, it is not going to help. You know why? Because the source of his soul is absolutely corrupt. Because his soul is corrupt, again, he could do tshuva. He could repent. Right? Everyone has the ability to repent. So if he would repent, okay. So that's different. But God is saying over here, listen, you have this prophet, he's got unbelievable power. He's taking power from the dark side. He's got unbelievable power. But he knows what goes on upstairs. He's not a slouch. But he's using his power for the wrong thing. So God says, even if I put my presence on him, his soul is so corrupted. Again, doesn't mean he doesn't have a way out. But we're saying that his soul is so corrupted, what can he do? So, Balaam reached this high spiritual level, in the sense of knowing things going on upstairs. But it didn't work at all, seemingly, in order to fix up his bad character traits. So as great as he was in one sense, he's tremendously bad over here when it comes to character traits. So, therefore, what can his prophecy be worth? His prophecy cannot be worth a whole lot if his character traits are so bad. So therefore, if that's true, as great as his knowledge is of what goes on upstairs, it's totally irrelevant because of his bad qualities. He cannot return his people to do tshuva. He cannot make them better. So from here, So for here that we learn, we learn a tremendous thing, certainly about Torah as well. That when God came to all the nations, and He says, "You want the Torah?" and they say, "Can I steal? No. Okay, I'm not interested. Right? Am I allowed to kill? No, I'm not interested." God went to all the nations. They didn't accept it. They weren't interested. So the Talmud tells us that if a person doesn't prepare Erev Shabbos, he doesn't eat on Shabbos. Meaning, if you don't prepare yourself in this world spiritually, you're working, as much as you can in spirit, in keeping Torah, doing mitzvahs, or if you're a non-Jew, doing whatever you need to do. Then, if you don't prepare yourself, what does the next world look like? I say, what? That's the whole point? I'm just here for brownie points. I'm going to eat matzah in, 450 pounds in 35 seconds, and then have to whistle Dixie, right? Kind of like having peanut butter stuck to your throat or on the roof of your roof of your mouth, right? That's So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says we should rather serve God, not to receive any benefit, not to receive any prize, because we really believe it's the right thing to do. You're going to get a portion of the world to come. That's the goal. Nonetheless, doesn't matter. We still have to serve Him. Right? They say, you have ulterior motive. Well, hopefully, that ulterior motive will allow you to serve Him better, serve Him properly. In either case, the other nations were not interested in preparing themselves in this world for the next. All they want is to go after their own desires, go after what their heart tells them. So if you don't prepare yourself, you only go after the physical. How is it going to be that you should have this great connection? They didn't want it. So if they didn't want it, so in the next world, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, they should get cut off. They don't have a portion. Right? By a Jew also. If an unreligious Jew, or he gives God lip service, he doesn't keep what he's supposed to keep. Right? He doesn't do what he's supposed to do. He's going to get punished. He's certainly going to get punished. That punishment could mean he gets spiritually cut off. Why would God give you a portion? You have no connection. You have no connection down here. Why should you have a connection in the next world? Why? You didn't prepare. You didn't do anything. All you did is eat, drink, and be merry, lest tomorrow I die. You went to casinos. You watched, you went to football games. You wasted all this time instead of drawing yourself close. So why should you get the benefit? You didn't prepare. Right? And you can't say, today it's very hard to say, I had no connection to Torah. I had no idea what Torah was. If you want to tell me you grew up as a potato farmer in Idaho, no offense to anyone in Idaho, right, who grew up there or was a potato farmer. Right? If you grew up like that, or, you never found out you were Jewish till later in life, and it was hid from you and this and that, okay, I understand. You're still accountable to a point. But what about everybody else? What about everybody else? Most people know there's such a thing as an Orthodox Jew. Most people know there's such a concept as Shabbos. They say, but I keep it differently, and I do other things, and that's not really what the Torah meant. Be that as it may, it's out of being an ignoramus. Right? There's a 614th commandment I'm always fond of saying, don't be stupid. The 600, and I'm gonna patent this. The 615th commandment is, don't be a moron. There's a lot out there. You choose to stick your head in the sand. You choose to be a big wig in a small pond, so to speak, because you got a big ego and you don't want to change. You don't want to see what the reality is. You're gonna pay. The Torah says absolutely you're gonna pay. So we can't say ignorance is bliss over here. Because most people can find out. Most people can get information. You choose not to get the information. So that's called a rebellion. That's not like, taking information on one side, taking it on the other, and see if they offset. See how it works. Is it true? Is it not true? Check, check, check. Nope. Get rid of this. Check. Nope. Get rid of this. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. It was for all time. It's not make-believe. It's not, well, if I feel like doing it, fine. If not, fine. It's a 5-year option to renew. So look at the results. Let's say you could turn the Torah into a pretzel. Another one of my favorite patented statements. Let's say you turn the Torah into a pretzel. Be a reform or conservative Jew. Do whatever you want. Feels good, fine. It doesn't, fine. Let me ask one major question. My one major question is, what does your next generation look like? Forget philosophy. We can argue philosophy another time. What does your next generation look like? And that to me is the bottom line. If you have 70% into marriage or more, and your kids only use their Hebrew name 4 times in their life, when they're born, bar bat mitzvah, when they get married, and when they die, and you cannot pass that down to the next generation, a mule is a tremendously strong animal. It's a hybrid between a donkey and a horse. One major issue, it is sterile. So I don't care what your argument is. It doesn't work. I don't care how you grew up, what you grew up with. You want to say, I want to help these people the way I grew up. I want to give back to them. But imagine you're drowning. God forbid a person's drowning. The Coast Guard comes and, save me! Right? You say, save me! So they say, okay, we're going to save you. What do? They throw you an anvil. Crack. Bam. Right on the head. Drown. That's what you want? That's what the Torah is recommending? It's a disaster. That's where most of the Jewish people are holding. It's an absolute disaster. Now, it's not about philosophy. It's about what works. What's gone on for the last 3,000 years. So then some people will use the argument. They say, you should take the Torah literally. Right? The Karaites. Right? Or known, as they're known. So they say, they'll say that the rabbis used their power, and they took things away from them, and yeah, they went out, but, it's like a mafia, and this and that. So, let's say that was true. Which it's not. But let's say for argument's sake it was true. If that would be true, then the end result would be, if they took power, they're not going to have power forever. Eventually they're going to lose power. So, if it didn't work, that's it. It dies. But what happened? We still have people learning Talmud. We still have Orthodox communities expanding by leaps and bounds. All over the world. Torah scholarship is unbelievable, where things are holding right now. There are other issues. I'm not going to say there aren't. There are other issues. But at the end of the day, where are all the Karaites? How many Karaites are left in the world? 50? 20? 30? They disappeared. They disappeared. And at the end of the day, the Torah says you go after the majority. They were the majority. The rabbis were the majority, so they went out. And even if they were the majority and it wasn't supposed to be, they would have died out. Didn't happen. So a person can choose and go whatever direction that they want. God has free will. I was once working with a college student, and he told me, he said, listen, you can convince me, 99%, but I still have that 1% free will. So I said, okay, let me ask you a question. I said, you ever write a term paper? He said, yeah. I said, what do you do to write a term paper? So he said, you take a thesis, and then you spend the majority of time getting information, proving it, and then concluding. And then make a conclusion. I said, good. I said, what would happen if you bring all this evidence to prove your point, and then as you get to your conclusion, you say, well, I'm not really sure. It could be like this, but, maybe it's like this, maybe like something else. Maybe it's not totally conclusive. You just spent the majority of your paper trying to prove it. Now you leave your conclusion, in doubt. So I asked him, I said, if you wrote a paper like that, 10-page paper, and you leave the conclusion in doubt. What is going to be the end result? What are you going to get as a grade? What do you think you're going to get as a grade? He said, oh, that's easy. You'll probably fail. I said, oh, why are you going to fail? He said, because you brought all this evidence and you leave it as a doubt. He said, if you bring all this evidence, what is it going to show? It's going to try and prove your thesis. You can't just say, well, I can prove the thesis up to a point, but then you have to throw it out because it can still be disproven by 1% or whatever. So I said, oh, excellent answer. I said, now let's go over and see if that works in Torah. So we just got through saying, or you just got through saying that you could prove to me 99%, but I still have that 1% free will. He says, yeah, I still have that 1% free will. I said, okay, let's go back to the term paper. That 1% free will, right, you're going to fail. You get 99%. You can't leave the other 1% in doubt. How can you leave it in doubt? You get 99%. And he said, but I can still have free will. I said, that's illogical. Right? Only a Jew can make this argument. I go, that's totally illogical. If you want to look at logic states you get 99% against 1. You can't leave it as a doubt. See, free will, as limited as it might be by us, to a certain extent, free will gives us the ability to say, yeah, maybe it's not true, maybe this, maybe that. But see, then you have to make a list. And you have to weight the list. What are the most important things, right? Name your top 5. And then weight them. This is worth 20%, this is worth 50%, it's worth 5%. So let's say you got 50, 20, and 10. Right? Then you say, these are the most important things. Yes, this is true. Yes, this is true. Yes, this is true. The other 20% you say, I'm not sure, maybe I have arguments against it, whatever. Okay. Pro that the Torah is true is 80%. Negative is 20%. Now the question's going to be, are you really that open-minded? Because now when I look at the evidence, and I evaluate and I say, well, most of the evidence seems to say it's true, but see, I still get the 20%. So if you were making any decision, any other decision, buying a house, a job, where to live, different things, you weight the most important things, and then you'll see if you have 75-25 in one direction, then you're going to know what the most important thing is and where you should go. See, but when it comes to spirituality, we don't always work in logic. Right? We don't, even if we believe it's 100% true, or 80% or 70%, whatever, there are plenty of things we don't do that we should. We don't live it the way it should. Even if we believe it, even if we keep it. So over here, this is unbelievable. Because over here, a number of times he goes to curse the Jewish people, and God puts words in his mouth and he praises them. And Balaam's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm paying you all this money. I just ransomed my whole country. I bankrupted my whole country so you can curse the Jewish people. How come you can't curse the Jewish people? Because God won't let me. Because God runs the world. Because God does all these things. This is Balaam. Right? This is someone, who's so disgusting in so many ways. But he's Modal Emes. He agrees, who God is and what he does. And even so, he still tries to do it again. Balak says, all right, go over here. I'll make, Balaam says, make 7 mizbeach, 7 altars. Right, Abraham, we had 1, we're going to have 7. Right, we're going to counteract, we're going to do all these things. After the first time God shows you something, what are you going back against? Not only that, he's on his trusted donkey, going along the way, the donkey crushes him against the wall. He starts smacking the donkey. And then donkey opens its mouth and says, don't you see this angel? The angel's got a sword right in his hand. About to chop my head off, you moron. And imagine this donkey talking to Balaam. And he says, don't you see? Then God opened his eyes. So that's the whole question. Why did God change nature for this idiot? For this inherently evil person? So again, we'll make the point that God opened his eyes. Balaam sees. So he's got this unbelievable ability to know what goes on in heaven, through sorcery and other things, and he's got tremendous ability. And God even speaks to him and shows him all these different things. Don't do this. Don't go with Balak. Don't do this. Just stop doing it. And then he starts putting words in his mouth. And he acknowledges it to Balak, more than once. So then you go back to the nations and say, you gave us this idiot. He can't change any of us. Look. The Rebbe says, yeah, 100% true. But he had prophecy. Some say he's equal in prophecy like Moshe, or like a little bit lower. So he's unbelievable, but his character traits killed him. Killed him. And God showed him once. And he showed him a second time. And he made his donkey show him. And he saw the angel. So what happened? Answer is that when you're steeped in garbage, it's almost impossible to get out. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Right? I've heard someone say that said to another Jew who was like doing all kinds of terrible things, and he said that you need you're so bad, you need you're so much in the garbage, you need a snorkel in order to breathe. And this person ended up becoming an Orthodox Jew later. So it is possible. But you see, when you're at that level and you're steeped in all these things, he says, even if God speaks to you, you don't change. So Rebbe here draws a conclusion, and it's, I think it's worth gold. That's why I'm bringing it out here. And that is, even if someone has prophecy, if you don't work on character development, prophecy ain't gonna change you. Let's repeat that. If you don't work on character development, then God would open up your eyes and you'd see all these spiritual things, prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that the Torah is true, even if you understand it. It's not necessarily going to make you change. That is a scary thought. How many people have said, if God were only to do a miracle for me, I would change? Yeah, I'm not so sure. Yeah, it might give you a spiritual uplift. How long is it going to take for you to change? If it takes at all. If it goes. Yeah, prophecy is an unbelievable thing. And you have ideas and thoughts or whatever that you never thought possible. Because God now opens up your mind. Right? Opens up yourself in order to do that. Helps you along the way. Reveals himself to you in a dream, in a vision. Whatever it is. It's not enough. Seemingly it's not enough. Jewish prophets are different. Jewish prophets work like a dog in order to overcome bad character traits. That's why, as the Rambam says, they have the ability to have prophecy. If you don't work on that, and you see like the nation, it would seem according to this, nations don't have a prayer. No pun intended. They don't have a prayer over here. Why? Who says they're going to have to work on character development? Right? They'll just do whatever they want to do. They could, like Balaam, reach, to high levels of understanding, right? But it doesn't change a person. And that just absolutely boggles the mind. Because, if God revealed himself, and God shows you more than once, not just what, maybe you think you're a crackpot. And you say, was it a vision? Wasn't it a vision? This happens more than once. That his angel speaks. Sorry, that the donkey speaks, and he sees the angel. That's not enough. He speaks the curse and ends up complimenting the Jewish people. He praises them more than once. That's not enough. That's like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 things. Answer is, prophecy doesn't make you a tzadik. Prophecy doesn't make you a religious person. It doesn't change you if your character traits are that bad. So I just want to remind everyone that I have a class in Intro to Kabbalah based on the Ramchal's book, Derech Hashem, The Way of God. It's every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. I also give conversion classes and Noahide classes. You can take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism, or my blog, orthodoxconversion.com. Anyone who wants to contact me, can contact me at Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com, RABBICHAIM COFFMAN at gmail.com. Everyone have a great Shabbos.